Okay, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel in the Galilee. Today's the 26th of July. It's Friday. It's 9:22 in the morning, and it's still hot. 85 degrees already at 9:22 in the morning. 95 high. Horrible day. 96 tomorrow, slightly worse. 97 Sunday, slightly worse. Monday 96, Tuesday 95, 94 on Wednesday, 95, and then on Saturday, a week from tomorrow, which they can't predict, it goes down to 91, but they can't predict that far out. It's ridiculous. Okay, what we're going to do today is cover a few things. We'll talk some war intel with Israel. There's not any major thing going on. Lebanon is starting to shoot anti-aircraft missiles at Israeli jets, which means to me they got missiles from Iran. They didn't hit any of the planes or damage any of the planes, so it's unlikely they had any advanced missiles from Russia, if even Russia has anything. I doubt Russia, Iran, and China have anything that could hit a F-35 stealth jet. But the deliverance is 100% not coming from the IDF of Israel, believe me. That would just encourage the people to continue trusting in their warriors and not God. And it would give credence to the rabbis' crazy preachings to them. So that is not something you're going to see, okay? The IDF is not going to be delivering Israel. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Iran. We'll talk about American bases in Iraq getting hit last night. And then we'll talk about, Trump and Netanyahu and Biden and Kamala, the camel. And then we're not going to spend a lot of time on the intel. Then we're going to get into Moses and Aaron and the children of Israel and how they were dealing with all these things, like the parting of the Red Sea, how they were before it parted, and there's going to be a lot of analogies to today that I'm going to show you, and a couple of other interesting things, okay? So, there's nothing that major revolutionary going on in the intel other than Biden is telling Netanyahu, you got to have a ceasefire soon, which means leave Hamas intact. And Trump is telling Netanyahu something different. He's telling him, go ahead and finish the war quickly, because he knows Biden is leaning on him, and get your hostages back. And we found the bodies of 5 hostages that were soldiers dead in Gaza. So how many of these hostages are still alive is probably very low, if any. I don't know. There's a rumor going around that our laser weapon system that knocks down aircraft, well, mostly drones and missiles, they months ago they tested the prototype and it was working, and I imagine they're going into production, and they say they'll be ready for use and distribution to the military in volume next year. Now, when they tested the prototype, that meant, okay, the design works, and they hand assemble it at great expense with a lot of time, and now they got to set up for mass production. So are we ever going to see these laser weapons being used? I seriously would say no. But they're saying Netanyahu is waiting and dragging the wars out till these laser weapon systems are ready en masse, and then they can take down missiles. Now, the thing you got to understand with these laser weapon systems is it's about 3 or 4 seconds of the laser on the missile to destroy the missile. So one laser system could probably take out 10, 12 missiles, or 8 or something in a minute. So if you had 5 of them set up, you could take a lot a lot of missiles down in a minute, you know, and they can only launch so many at one time. So they're saying that's what Netanyahu's waiting for. It's possible, but why is he waiting with Gaza? Nah, it's Biden, who's still refusing to give us the big bombs, the 2,000 pounders, and it might be that he really wants to use those in Lebanon. And while Biden wants it to look like he's helping Israel, he wants Israel to suffer. Because if Israel suffers a lot, then they might be compelled to fall for this lie of giving the West Bank over to a Palestinian state for peace. Well, we tried that with Gaza. Nobody in Israel is that dumb, you know. Biden is so ignorant of the Middle East, you know, that he thinks it's going to work if he just beats us down enough, you know. And that means that East Jerusalem, which is the site of the temple and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is not the site of the temple's, you know, maybe 600, 800, 900 feet away. It's a different area where the Pool Sawan is area, but, you know, this is the kind of thing. And they want to keep Jerusalem trodden down of the heathen, so no temple comes up, you know, all that stuff that Satan's trying to do, which is absurd. Okay, so I'm going to go into the chat, so sit tight. I'm going to take a very brief period of time to go into the chat, make sure we got sound and picture, and put a couple of quick posts up in the chat. I do want to remind you, if people mock me, I'm going to just block them, okay? And if any of you there, the spiritual warfare warriors, yeah, the beard went. If any of you spiritual warfare warriors want to do tossing and other spiritual warfare on those posting trash in the chat, be my guest, please. And also feel free to report them. If they keep getting blocked in chats for offensive remarks, YouTube blocks them from posting in any chat whatsoever for, could be a month, it could be 3 months, you know, it gets hard for them. Then they got to create new accounts and use proxies, and the problem is most of the proxies, if not, or I'd say probably 98% of them are blocked by YouTube because they got all the troublemakers. Okay, so don't think reporting them is such a lightweight thing. It's not. YouTube really doesn't care, you know, what the site is. If people are harassing in there, they want them out of YouTube, or minimally they don't want them posting. Okay, I'm going to put a few quick posts up in the chat. I'll go as fast as I can and sit tight. It's going to be a good one today. I'd rather do this than just leave an empty screen up there. And I'm making typos while I talk, so I gotta shut up for a minute. I'm putting my email up there, so if any of you want to send in prayer requests with privacy, you could email it. If that doesn't bother you, you could post it in the chat. I do check the chat periodically. Please provide 2 initials for the person or persons you want to have the prayer request for their privacy. It's only fair to them. Okay, I got my posts up. Now, being a Bible-believing site, I'm going to do some praise before we start, and I have no control over who joins in or doesn't. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Please ignore anybody that comes in here and says, send a shout out to me or somebody else. What these are, they're Satan bots frequently in my site. In other sites, they may not be. They're Satan bots, and they want you to violate 2 John verses 9 to 11, which says that if you give a greeting to somebody, you would be a partaker of their sins. And that's why Yeshua told the 70 when he sent them out, greet no man on the way. Okay, so don't do that. That's just one of the cheap parlor tricks that they're so intoxicated with, thinking they're so powerful with all the secrets, yeah. So Lebanon is now starting to take planes down with anti-aircraft systems. They did it last night. It had no effect on the planes. Russia might give them hypersonic missiles, and they might have more of an effect, but I doubt it. Iran has no missiles to give them that are going to take our jets down. And Russia is not about to start handing over large amounts of missiles. They need them for their own war in Ukraine. A couple of days ago, Chinese and Russian planes crashed into Alaska airspace, and they got escorted out by fighter jets from Canada and America, I believe. That was the first, probably not the last. No fighting yet in Taiwan or South Korea. North Korea fight, none of that. The Ukraine war is the same old, Ukraine pushes Russia this way, and then they go back and forth, and waste weapons and all of that. Netanyahu addressed Congress and got, I understand, 50-something standing ovations. It means nothing to me. It shouldn't mean much to you. This is the Satan bot leaders of the world patting each other on the back. It's just silly to pay attention to that. Kamala Harris is starting to show her anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian sentiments. She'll never be. So what? I think today Netanyahu meets with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. That'll be splashing all in the news. An American base was hit in Iraq by the militias, which are backed by Iran, and America might lose their patience and start attacking Iran. It's in Scripture, Jeremiah 49. Some of these things might happen in the year of redemption, and they might not. Remember, in Jeremiah 50:51, after our redemption, it shows that we're going to be doing a lot of fighting. It also implies that in Zechariah 12. So, not everything is going to happen during the year of recompenses over the controversy of Zion. The word controversy is a poor choice of words that they took on purpose, I expect, in the English translation. It means strife, fighting over Zion. Zion means dry, parched place. That's Israel now. It's pronounced Sion. It would be in English like a TZ sound, which really doesn't exist in English, but it would be kind of like that, you know? What else? America and Great Britain did do a hit again on Yemen yesterday. I don't know how much damage, probably very little. But it seems that Biden is going after Yemen with more zeal than before, but not enough. Yemen is still saying, oh, we're going to still do a counterattack on Israel for their attack on us. Well, what Yemen's not going to say is, oh, we're not going to counterattack, we're afraid of them, or nothing. So this is just par for the course. As I said a few days ago, Yemen appears to be Edom. Edomia, when you read that in the prophecy, is Edom also. People are again talking about the Biden doubles, or double, maybe there's one. People are saying, look at the eyes, the shape of the eyes, with the double and Biden are not the same. Others are saying when Biden gave his speech in the Oval Office, looking out the window and seeing things out there that didn't belong, movement with the Oval Office, it probably was in a studio made to look like the Oval Office. And they took the picture of Biden's wristwatch and blew it up. And the time on his watch was an hour before he was supposed to do the live speech. So the implication is that he did it an hour before, and they probably edited it. So if he stumbled over his words, they took it out and fixed it. So that was a good lie, and shows how stupid he is with the wristwatch. And others are saying that it was an artificial intelligence Biden, which I doubt, because the wristwatch thing never would have happened if it was. It was probably really Biden, and he probably really is alive. If the president died, they might conceal it from the public up to, 6, 8, 10 hours, 12 hours. They're not going to conceal it for 4 or 5 days. And it's unconstitutional, because if he's dead, they got to swear Kamala Harris in as president and the Speaker of the House as vice president. And they can't leave America without a president for days at a time. So he's alive. Israel sent draft notices to 1,000 of the ultra-Orthodox. And it appears that they were told by their rabbis to just ignore it. And Netanyahu will probably not enforce it. Then the Supreme Court will come up with a decision that they have to enforce it, and Netanyahu will stall it, and that kind of thing. So he keeps the ultra-Orthodox in his coalition, which the fact that they haven't left this coalition means that Netanyahu is telling them, don't worry, they'll never go in the army. So the civilian population in Yemen is turning against the Houthis. They realize what idiots they are and what kind of damage they're causing to Yemen. It's Gaza all over again. But I don't think you're going to see an armed resistance. The war in Gaza is still ongoing. most of the food shortage problems you hear about and cooking fuel and things like that are a result of Hamas stealing the food from the people, from the humanitarian aid, so the people can't get it. I've put numerous videos on my YouTube illustrating them beating the civilians and shooting at them and everything else. You know, they use big clubs, everything. So Hamas has done more harm to the civilian population in Gaza, probably fivefold more than what Israel ever did. And I don't know where these people in Gaza get the money from, because you hear all these reports. When food gets tight, the prices are astronomical. I don't believe that. Where the heck are they going to get the money? Where? You know? It doesn't make sense. Hamas keeps the food from them. So they keep complaining and more humanitarian aid comes in and then they steal more of it. Big deal. None of the world leaders tend to really admit that, because that would call for a cry against Hamas to put them down, and nobody wants that. They want to put Israel down. Satan's immediate goal appears to be to get control of East Jerusalem, where the true site of the temple is, have it controlled by the Muslims, and therefore he can relax about Israel having a temple. Now, the way he seems to go there is, let's just bleed them dry with attacks from everybody and put pressure on him by the Houthis attacking shipping. And get them beaten down so much they'll do anything, including giving the West Bank back, which would just lead to our destruction a few months after that. Yemen is telling us they got surprises for us. Great, yeah. An Israeli security team on a merchant marine ship, it may have been an Israeli ship, had M16 type rifles with them. And the Houthis were driving drone boats that are suicide. They blow up at this vessel. And I put this video yesterday up on my Telegram. And the Israeli guys, which were ex-military, are calmly there in the, I believe, in the prone position, shooting their M16s at the drone boat as it gets closer and closer. It was pretty tense. Well, it was probably a good 100, 150 yards away, I'm guessing at the distance, and they hit the boat and blew it up. This is probably what caused Modi to call for the ships to have security guards with rifles on the boat. And apparently it's already going on, so it might get expanded. The Houthis have curtailed their attacks with missiles on shipping for some days now, since the attack by Israel. So they might have had their attack capability damaged, and they might be afraid to keep doing it because they're afraid Israel will do another attack. When you're dealing with the criminally insane, they're going to go conduct violence in the, completely against all logic. So they'll probably try something else again. Israel will probably outguess them. Israel said, I think the foreign minister said that if Yemen tries to counterattack against us for our attack on them, we have our target packages already selected. So they know what they're going to hit next. And probably the next attack wouldn't be 13 planes. Like the first attack could probably be 25. And if they retaliate against that attack, then there'll probably be several attacks of planes coming in during the day and night, just pounding them into oblivion. And the people in Yemen rising up against the Houthis would encourage Israel to do more attacks. It'll isolate the Houthis, put pressure on the government. They'll cry out to the international community, help us get rid of the Houthis, stuff like this. So the Houthis have to pay attention to that. But they're not real bright. They're criminally insane. Look what happened to Gaza. It's a garbage heap. Years to just haul the debris out. They're saying 15 years to rebuild. Hamas wants the civilians there. They don't care if they're intense. Because of the human shield possibility, and then cries of famine and genocide. And that's why the other nations don't want them, because they don't want them in their country either. If the civilians leave Gaza, then Israel is free to just mow down Hamas with carpet bombing, non-stop artillery. No more humanitarian aid, no more water supply, no more electric supply, no more humanitarian aid, no more humanitarian fuel supply. And they'll cut the internet, they'll cut everything. And artillery will be pounding them day and night. And then when Gaza's empty, the Israelites will promptly move in. And the nations would call for a return of the Gazans back to Gaza. But why would they go back? There's nothing to go back to. So the safest move is to keep them there. I don't see a ceasefire materializing at this point. Hamas's demands are psychotic. They think they're winning this war. How? How do they think that? They're crazy. They're crazy, that's why they think that. Yemen and Lebanon don't want to see this happen to their country. And they're astute enough to not come out with stupid comments like, oh, Israel are a bunch of genocidal maniacs. Instead, they're saying up in Lebanon, Hezbollah refuses to stop attacking Israel, and we don't want to turn into another Gaza. So the real government of Lebanon is talking about splitting the country in two, pulling the civilians out of South Lebanon, leaving Hezbollah there, and then Israel would be free to carpet bomb them and just blow them to smithereens. It's unlikely Israel needs the 2,000-pound bombs to pursue the end of the war in Gaza. It would be helpful. But they might be looking to use those bombs in Lebanon to blow up the tunnels. This I don't know. Maybe it's not true. I don't know. I will tell you from past history that Netanyahu doesn't care if these Muslim terrorist groups launch lots of missiles in Israel continuously, and he just doesn't care. He's a horrible leader. Now, the American fires are getting worse. I posted some stuff up on Telegram earlier today, and I'm going to go there and read you some articles like from ABC News and things like that, so it's, legitimate. Someone asked me what are my thoughts on the protests. The protests are designed to put political pressure on America to just walk away from Israel. Okay. So you've got extreme fires in America, and you have extreme drought. And to make the point, I want to show you some maps of the fire and the drought, because these are two things mentioned in Jeremiah 50 and 51. And now we're going to start to drift more into Bible prophecy. Now I got to find these maps. I think that Telegram is showing it to me as being put up yesterday, which I put up very early in the morning. So I gotta go back there. And I'm in there. I'm gonna find it, don't worry. Be a minute and I'll get it. I put a lot of posts up on Telegram. If you want the link to my Telegram, just send me an email. My email's pinned up at the top of the chat, and it's in the description box on the very lowest line down. You got to download the app Telegram Messenger, which is free. Telegram's completely free. I'm going to read you an article first about fires. This is coming out of CBS News. Park fire in Northern California explodes in its first day. Arson suspect arrested. We're shell-shocked. This is north of Sacramento. Wednesday afternoon in a park near Chico, California, north of Sacramento. The fire exploded in size overnight and continued to spread through the day, Thursday, and investigators believe it was deliberately set. The park fire grew from about 6,400 acres late Wednesday night to 45,000 acres Thursday morning, and then to over 124,000 acres, which is 195 square miles, Thursday evening. This is coming from California Fire, the state fire agency that works on this stuff. The fire has fingers that are growing in different directions. Depending on which way the wind is blowing. This is from the Butte County Sheriff. Cal arson investigators arrested a 42-year-old Chico man on suspicion of starting the blaze. Butte County District Attorney announced officials later identified the suspect as Ronnie Dean Stout II. His arrest followed reports of an unknown male seen pushing a burning car into a gully at around 3 p.m. Wednesday. in the upper part of Bidwell Park where the blaze broke out. The man was seen after he pushed the car down a gully, calmly leaving. Even in the next county, Tahoma County, they're doing evacuation notices. They're setting shelters up. This is yesterday, I think 3,500 people already were evacuated. They don't know how many structures were damaged. Homes were lost. They're thinking 1,100 homes gone. Okay, enough on this one. So this is just, one fire. Jeremiah 50 verse 38. Oh, I'm not ready for that yet. Hold on. I'm going to show you the drought map. The drought map is coming from Newsweek, which is not a, pro-gun survivalist, situation. The white area has no drought. The other areas with the color have drought in various degrees depending on the darkness of the color. You can pause this and look at it. It's widespread. It looks like it's more than half the country. Now they'll give you all kinds of alibis why the drought's going on, but I'll give you the alibi of alibis. Jeremiah 50:38, referencing the daughter of Babylon. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up, for it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. Okay. The word drought in the Hebrew means to dry up or drought, but it's also, the word is related to heat. Okay? And there's been a lot of hot temperature waves throughout the United States. Much of the United States has the fires. Wildfires and evacuation burning out of control with the air quality concerns. And there's a tremendous amount of destruction. It's not just California, it's much of the United States. Alberta, Canada, Calgary. Alberta is covered with wildfires, smoke, due to the Wildfires across the province of Alberta. Our thoughts are with anyone affected. The fires and our hearts and prayers go out. Okay. Wildfires prompt California evacuations as crews battle Oregon and Idaho fires, and they're saying they started with lightning. That would be from God if it was true. Rapidly growing wildfires have prompted evacuations in northern and southern California, while some Oregon residents have been cleared to return home after a thunderstorm. We dropped water. But also potentially dangerous lightning on the largest active blaze in the United States. So that's probably going to be spreading. Jasper National Park is burnt to the ground in Alberta. Multiple structures in Jasper in Alberta, Canada have been burned. Now, it's not just in America. Wildfires continue to burn in Portugal, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria. And it's probably in other countries that we don't know about. Richmond, Oregon took it bad. Okay? So both of these things are spoken in the prophecy of the destruction of the daughter of Babylon, America. Jeremiah 50 and 51, and I read you some of them. I don't think I read you the one with the fires, though. I could do that. Jeremiah 51:58. Thus saith Jehovah of armies, the broad walls of Babylon shall be utterly broken, and her high gates shall be burned with fire, and the people shall also labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. It also says that the Lord will kindle fires in and about her cities in Jeremiah 50:51. Now, these events by themselves are things we have seen in the past, but not when you associate with all the other end times events, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Europe, and Taiwan, and South Korea, and Japan, and China, and Russia, and Belarus, and Poland, and the Trump assassination, Biden stepping out of the race. You put all this stuff together, and it gets pretty much pointing the finger right at prophecy, not just an event of a fire or a drought, because you have the fire and the drought together combined with all this other stuff. And what about the sleeper agents in America? So, it's a big deal. few people are going to receive it. It's like the days of Noah and like the time of Sodom. They didn't believe a flood was coming. Sodom didn't believe they were going to get burned up. They did. And the neighboring cities around Sodom and Gomorrah got burned up. So some people are saying Canada might go with America. You know, it could be, but I don't know. It's not America. So, but it might go. Now, America arrested in, I believe, Texas, one of the big drug kingpins from the cartels. Okay? There was a lot of arrests of cartel people, and the remaining cartels, which are massive in Mexico, said they're going to start to attack the American border. This happened in the last day. Now, attacking the Mexican border and the walls, the great walls of, you know, America, the walls are between America and Mexico. They have no Pacific coast walls or East Coast walls or Florida walls or Canada walls. The only walls are the ones between Mexico and America. So yeah, this could be the case. Are they possibly working with Hamas, Hezbollah, or Iran and China and Russia and North? Yeah, I would think they are. They could have weapons. The Mexican government can't control the cartels because the government is the cartels. That's how they work. Years ago, they became so wealthy, they just find squeaky clean candidates that they could corrupt and run them for president, and they control the government. What do you think's going on? That's not that hard to figure out. So the cartel is the government. That's the way Mexico and most of Central and South America operate. I haven't read of a big drug bust in America by the DEA in a year, maybe, or months. What are they up to? Well, they're up to this. They busted the big cartel bosses. That's, you know, something, you know. They're probably going on anti-terrorist. I think they've probably been deployed to pursue anti-terrorism activities. The DEA is excellent at surveillance. They're very, very good at it. Extremely good. Not that other agencies aren't good at it either. They happen to be very, very good. And, you know, that's how they, generally, from surveillance, electronic eavesdropping, hacking, things like this, they get information and then they confront candidates that they suspect could be turned into informants, and they turn them. And then they work their way up the pole and get as high as they can and make drug arrests. But the real kingpins are not in America, so how the heck are you going to arrest them? They live in Mexico on compounds, and they would be, you know, surrounded by at least 20 to 50 security guards, if not 100. So if you want to storm a compound with 100 security people, you're going to need about 300, and that's an army. And America can't go into Mexico or other countries, Peru, any of the other ones, and conduct the military operation to snatch the guy out of there, you know. So the chances of sending a SEAL team or someone like that with, 6 or 8 guys to surreptitiously isolate the guy, dispatch his bodyguards and kidnap him and bring him to trial are really not feasible, because there's a compound with walls and all kinds of weapons. They have RPGs, heavy machine guns, light machine guns, they got night optics, they might have shoulder fired rockets. I expect they probably have a few of those around. They probably have armored cars, safe rooms in the mansion, in the compound that the cartel people live in. It's not an easy thing to do. You need an army to do it. So it's very difficult to get them. And now with the open border, you can only imagine how much drugs are coming in. I have no idea what the price of drugs is in America, but I imagine it's probably affordable, and there's a fentanyl crisis and other things like that. So that's another problem America has that's generally not really spoken about. So I could see the cartels rising up here to attack America, and the way they'll do that is probably knock down some wall areas and open the border even more. They could open it up in 20, 30 places. Shoulder fired rockets will open it up. Satchel charges would open it up. Hitting it with big, like you take a really big dump truck, a garbage truck that's got a lot of wheels on it, and you put a massive big ramming bumper on the front of it with 1/2 inch or 1 inch thick steel, extended out 3 or 4 feet from the front bumper of the truck. Put metal plates shaped like this, where you could see through over the windshield so pieces don't come into the compartment, and just start ramming the fence. Down it'll come with a garbage truck. It'll come down. That's why Israel prefers to use these fences made out of concrete that's probably about 9-10 inches or a foot thick, 25 feet high, and down at the base they're even 2.5, probably 30 inches thick, and they go into the ground, so they're anchored into the ground, and they're put together with the pillars on either side with pieces of rebar so it becomes uniform. So you can ram that with a big garbage truck all day long, you're not going to get very far. Break the truck, probably. But the Mexico-America border is some sort of metallic fence that would easily be rammed, probably with a big pickup truck. You can knock it down, or a bus. It wouldn't be that difficult. Not hard. Okay, I do have some prayer requests. Let me get those out. For MS, Mike Sierra, MS, Mike Sierra, MS. Pray for a broad healing for MS. Now, I don't know if I did this yesterday. I didn't take it off, so I'm going to do it again. For AP, Alpha Papa, AP, Alpha Papa, AP. Pray to get a job based on an upcoming job interview. Pray gets the job where Shabbat is off. So for AP, Alpha Papa has an upcoming job interview. Pray lands the job and is allowed to not work on Shabbat. We do pretty good with our prayers for people that want work without Shabbat. Okay, and now I deleted those so I know we made them. Now, a couple of notes I want to bring out to you. It says everlasting life. Let me, that when you see Yeshua, you'll have everlasting life, John 6:40. The Hebrew word for everlasting it's also in the Old Testament too. It's not just in the New Testament. So, everlasting is olam, okay? And it means like a long time. It has different meanings, but it doesn't mean you'll never die again. That's eternity, that's immortality. And that comes when you're in New Jerusalem and you drink from the water of life and you eat from the tree of life. It means long lasting, a long time. It could mean an indeterminate forever. And that's why you read, my people's days shall be like that of a tree. A tree dies, but it could go 2,000-3,000 years, okay? And all you have to do is make it into New Jerusalem. Want to go to Exodus 14, okay, and we're going to learn some stuff from Exodus 14, and we're going to be applying it to ourselves today. Exodus 14, verse 1. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, his name in Hebrew is Moshe, it's my name in Hebrew, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pi Haroth, between Migdol and the sea, the Red Sea, over against Baal-zephon, before it shall you encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness had shut them in. So Pharaoh's saying, oh, they're stuck in the land, the wilderness has kept them captive there, okay? And then it reads as you read on, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host. See, the host means army. The translators don't want you to understand God has an army of angels in the millions, okay? Upon his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am Jehovah, and they did so. So with this I am Jehovah, what it really says in Hebrew is Ani Jehovah. Ani Jehovah, which means Ani means me, or I. If you said Ani Yesh Arbe Kesef, it would mean I have a lot of money. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people, and they said, why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? They were mad. They wanted their slaves back. it's rather easy to have a very good economy with slaves. You work them, a reasonable amount of time. You want to keep them. You work them a regular day. They go home. They have a social life. They have families. They make kids, which are born into slavery. They belong to the owners. Stuff like that. And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. This is Pharaoh. And he took 600 chosen chariots, and the chariots of Egypt, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over every one of them. And Jehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea beside Pi-Hahiroth before Baal-Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their The children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto Jehovah, and they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? See, this is the type of thing with people in the daughter of Babylon and other nations, that they're going to have to leave and come to Israel, the believers, lost tribes. Their tendency is, why, I got to leave America? Oh, I got a house, I got 2 pickups, I got internet, I got, 600 stations on cable. I got this, I got a jacuzzi, I got a pool, I got this, I got that. I don't want to go. See, you think it's better to stay, under a harsh, cruel ruler, reporting to Satan, than it is to go out and go to Israel. So this is what the Israelites were manifesting. They were saying, why'd you take us out of here? We don't have any food. I mean, we're eating manna. We should have stayed in Egypt. Pharaoh's going to kill us now. Yeah, we were slaves in Egypt, but we had all the fish we could eat. We had all kinds of veggies. It wasn't so bad. Contrary to Hollywood movies, the Egyptians knew that if they worked them 16 hours a day, they would die quick. And they would be lousy slaves. So they probably worked 8 hours or something like that. Maybe even less, I don't know. The heat was bad in Egypt. Towards the end, they had it bad, but before they got to the end, it wasn't that bad for them. It was bad, but not that bad. And that's what people say. They don't understand that they're under Satan's dominion because the leaders of every country in the world, Satan's the God of this age, not world, this age. This age is closing, days away, and the age to come with eternal life is coming. But they don't have faith to project ahead and see what it'll be like. So they just go back to, I don't have it so bad here. I got heat, I got air conditioning, I got food. Yeah, we got inflation, so what? I still got food. Yeah, if I lose my job, I'm going to be broke in 10 days. But yeah, I haven't lost my job. You know, they're beaten down. Okay? I remember life in the 50s in America very well. And people were very friendly to their neighbors and stuff like that. Much of America lived without locked doors. Much of America. New York, LA, Miami, Chicago, Boston. No, they didn't. But a major piece of America just, shut the door to keep the animals and the bugs out, When I was a kid in America, we had an apartment, and on the hot summer days, the people in the buildings gave, with each apartment, came a wooden door. And the wooden door had slots in it. You could change the angle to horizontal or keep them down so it was hard to look in. And what the people did is they kept the metal door open, they propped it open. And they had the wooden door closed with a little latch. That's all it was. And during the heat of the day, they would open the big heavy metal door, put this wooden door in place. The superintendent of the building would take the wooden doors away, usually around October, probably sometime in late September, the last half of September, early October. He would take them away and put them in storage downstairs. The buildings typically had 42 apartments, and they had storage rooms. It wasn't a big deal. And then when the weather started getting warm, which would probably be in May, mid-May or something like that, or early May, he would come and give you the door back and put them in the hinges, and you would have the wooden door. The wooden door was outside the metal door, so when you went out of the house, you pushed the wooden door open, put the key in the metal door, locked it, and then the wooden door would go back over against it on the outside. So my mother didn't see a problem letting the wooden slotted door be the only door during the day. And this is in New York City and the Bronx in the 50s. People were not fearful. That's New York. Other places in America, they just had the screen door closed. They didn't bother locking up the doors. In the winter they would. They'd use the doors to keep the wind out, the bugs, the animals. When they weren't home, they probably locked the doors. The windows would be open. And, they didn't have this lifestyle that's come on America. In the 50s and before, many of the automobiles in America were convertibles. Because they weren't worried about somebody slicing the top up and breaking in. They drove around with the top down. They weren't worried about people carjacking them, robbing them, coming up to them with a gun. This didn't happen. Women would ride around in convertibles with the top down. One of the things that people did, and this was going on into the 70s in America, which is, 50 years ago or so, 40, 50 years ago. They, one of the tricks you used to do, and I used to do it, is a lot of the cars did not have air conditioning until mid-60s, and even then a lot of people didn't buy air conditioning. by the mid 70s, everybody was getting air conditioning, you know. And a lot of people didn't have factory air conditioning, and they came up with aftermarket air conditioners. They were okay, they weren't as good. They'd hang this big contraption under your dashboard, and it would be about 3 feet long, and it had ducts that you could turn, and they would put, you know, the compressor and all the other stuff in the engine. These cars were so big, there was so much room in the engine compartment, and they put air conditioners in. But it wasn't like factory air, which was much better. So what a lot of people did with the convertible is they put the windows down, and that gave you a great flow through of air. It was warm air, but it was like sitting in front of a fan. And then what they would do is, to get it even better, in a lot of cars, the rear window was made out of, in the 40s and 30s, maybe even into the early 50s, the very early 50s, the window was made out of a cellophane or a plastic, and it zipped out. So you could open the zipper in the rear window and it would fall inside the car, and then when you went around, you had tremendous flow through air. It was like sitting in front of a powerful fan when you were on the highway. And you didn't get the sun beating down on you because the top was up. So in the daytime, that was a popular game people played, okay? And eventually they started putting a solid plastic window in, not a little, you know, piece of flexible plastic. This was a solid window made out of plastic, and you could zip that out and set it down. So you had that. And they also made convertibles. These were not, there were not a lot of them, but they existed. Ford had one, I think Mercury and some others, where the convertible was actually a hard top. And you push buttons and the trunk would open, not from the rear like this, it would open where the back seat is like this, and the top would come up on struts, and it would go down into the trunk, lowered in the trunk, and then the lid would close it. It left you with precious little trunk space, precious little, if anything left. But you had the benefit of a hard top in the winter, because convertible cars got cold in the winter, believe me. They were cold, okay? And you had to change your canvas top usually 2 to 3 years. The window would be foggy in the back, and it would, every two, depending where you lived, every 2-3 years, maybe sometimes you get 4 years or so, they would change the top. You went into a shop, and they would order the convertible top from the factory or an aftermarket guy. It would come, they'd call you up, we got your top, you'd bring the car in, it would take a few hours, maybe a half a day. They would get the old top off and throw it away and put the new one on, and you'd start all over again, you know. Also, the convertible tops played havoc with the seats because the sun, you know, so the leather seats, which were popular then, would start to get dry and cracked. And it was hard as heck to put oil on the seats and get it to penetrate the paint or the dye to get into the leather. What you had to really do was, and I restored an old Cadillac once, and what you really had to do was sand the seats and get the paint dye off, and then put they had different kinds of oils you put on there, and just let it sink in for 2 or 3 days, and then you repaint it. I did it with Cadillac seats. It worked out pretty good. It would crack and stuff, but it was okay. So the convertibles played havoc on the seats. they didn't really want to give you fabric seats because if it started to rain with the top down, your fabric seats would get drenched. It would take days to get them dry. You'd have a stink, mold, mildew. So they preferred to use the vinyl or leather seats in a convertible. And the carpets would get wet. And, you know, if that happened, then they started to smell. You had to go to a place, they'd rip the carpets out and put new carpets in. And, you know, but you can't, you know, there's almost no convertibles running around today. Who the heck wants to drive around with the top down? You know, you'd be stopped at a light and some guy will come over and just crack you in the head with a pipe and steal a car or take your phone or your wallet. I mean, you know, people don't do it anymore, but people did it back then, you know. So here you are coming home at 1:30 in the morning in a city, and you got the top down and you stopped at a light, and nothing's going to happen. You didn't have to worry about it. You know, people weren't in the habit of buying burglar alarms. You know, people had locks on their doors, you know, and windows, but they weren't securing the windows and, you know, things like that, you know. Life was easy, you know. The schools let you go out for lunch. Even the grade schools, they stopped that, I think, in the 70s because the kids were going out and getting high and they weren't coming back. They were getting drunk. But it used to be, when I went to high school, they had a rifle team in the high school. My parents wouldn't let me join it. But I had friends who were in it. They bought 22 rifles. They had to keep it in a case, unloaded, when they had rifle team practice, which was 2 days a week. And they would not leave the rifle in the closet where you left your coats. They would carry the rifle in the case around with them from class to class. Could you imagine today letting kids in a high school go to school with 22 rifles with ammo? I went through it. Kids carried the rifles around. Not pistols, rifles. Yet at the same time, they had already eliminated the football team in my high school a few years earlier, because the amount of injuries the kids were getting at the football team was very high, and there were fights breaking out amongst the different teams. So most of the schools had eliminated the football teams. And then they made us go to PE. I hated PE. In junior high school, they divided us up into two teams, one on one side of a volleyball net and one on the other side. And they gave us a ball. It was like a volleyball, I believe. And we'd throw the ball at each other over the net. And if the guy, or under the net, I can't remember, and if the guy got hit, he would be out, and you would keep playing. It was a stupid thing to do, you know? Then when I went to high school, in the winter, in the freezing winter, they made us go out in the cold weather wearing sneakers, gym shorts, and a t-shirt and run a mile. Now, they wouldn't do it if it was 32 degrees or anything like that, but they used to take us out in the 40s, maybe the 50s, in a t-shirt and shorts. You know how cold, I can still remember how cold that was. They were idiots. Many of the kids went and got a medical excuse letter from a doctor and got out of it, but I did it. It was so stupid. You know, when you went into the bathroom in the high school, it was so full of smoke, you couldn't even barely see. All the kids would go into the high school and smoke cigarettes on the break in between classes. Kids carried knives to school, all kinds of stuff, Nobody was paying attention. There weren't any cops in the school. The kids used to, when we approached the 4th of July, which was in late June, school was over June 30th. And we were off until after Labor Day. So you had 10 weeks off. So June 30th was the last day, and then you would go into 4th of July weekend, And the kids used to take these big firecrackers called ash cans. They were about an inch or an inch and a half, probably an inch and a half long, about as thick as my finger, and it had a waterproof fuse in the middle of it. And they call them an M80, an ash can. They were rather powerful for fireworks. And then we also had cherry bombs, which were plastic and round. Sometimes they were made out of something that wasn't plastic. I don't know what it was, with a fuse. And the kids used to go to the bathroom, light the thing, which had a waterproof fuse, so you could play games and throw it in a pond and stuff, And they would flush it down the toilet and break the toilets. And you'd be sitting in class, and the high school had 5,000 kids. This is in New York City, 5,000 kids. So it was built in a square, and there was a courtyard in the square that nobody ever went into, but they had grass there. And you'd hear the explosions the last week of school. Boom! The toilets would be breaking. And I had skipped years. I got out of school. I got out of high school. I think I started high school. I was 12 years old, I think. No, that was junior high school. I was probably 14 or something. And there were kids in there that were 18, 19. They had cars. They drove to school. I used to have to walk. in the winter. It'd be so cold in the snow and the sleet and the rain, and I had to walk close to a mile. Maybe it was a mile. I don't know. It was a good walk. I don't remember. I could probably work it out, but it was probably less than a mile, probably 3/4, 2/3 of a mile. When I got to school, my ears would be numb, frozen, and my feet would be numb. And then, when you were inside the building, they kept it warm. Your ears would start hurting as they thawed out, I hated it. I hated life in New York. I couldn't stand it. 80% of the days in the winter are nasty. 80%. And the winter starts there sometime in October, and it's over in April. The 80% ugly weather. It's a terrible place. But it was, I used to ride the subways. I was maybe 12, not 11, 12, 13 years old. We'd ride the subways all over the place by ourselves as kids. Take subway rides for an hour, hour and a half, even longer. Nothing happened. When my parents were kids, when I was a baby, they still had this, but I don't remember. They had subway cars where they took the roof off the subway cars for the summer months. Then you could sit outside and it would be elevated above ground, and you'd be getting the breeze and stuff. So people used to take the subway to the beach or Coney Island, other places, and get suntans. But I missed that. So, you could go anywhere in New York City when I was a kid for 15 cents each way. It was, life was cheap and easy, and it was safe. Everybody had plenty of food. Rents were dirt cheap. Cars were dirt cheap. In the 50s, cars were, I don't know, $600, $800, $900 for basic cars. That was it. Gas was, back in the 50s, about 15 cents, 12 cents a gallon. People didn't pay much attention to buying gas. Electric bills would be $1 a month. the apartment buildings, we never had a water bill. The water was so cheap, the apartment building paid for it. And they provided heat. They had a coal burner downstairs, and they had radiator pipes that would send steam into the pipes, and they had to give it to you, I think about 16 hours a day you had to have heat. So they would turn the heat on, I think at 5 or 6 in the morning, and you would hear the pipes would be expanding from the cold, and they would be banging. So at night you didn't have heat, you had blankets, or you used an electric heater. And it was a terrible heat. It was wet heat. From the steam would come out from a valve in the radiator so it wouldn't blow up, and the house was muggy and damp. Oh, I hated that place, you know. It was terrible. But, you know, there was just a whole different kind of life, you know. But people wouldn't have wanted to leave the New York in the 50s or the New America in the 50s. Everything was great. You had, you know, the food was to a great extent what we call organic, no GMO. The whole medical community was completely different. The doctors were cheap. Medical insurance was, I don't know, you know, $30, $40, $50 a year, if that. Gas was cheap, rent was cheap, electric was cheap, heat was cheap, clothing was to a great extent made in America, and it was a lot of all cotton and a lot of all wool. It was, you know, life was easy. You didn't have this, you had no cable TV, you had no internet, you had a few stations on TV in black and white. A lot of people didn't bother watching TV very much, or not at all. You knew people that didn't have a television in the 50s. They didn't have one. They had a radio. People used to go outside in the warm weather and sit on beach chairs in the concrete in New York, and they would bring a radio with them. And they'd listen to the baseball games. And if you went to the baseball games, like at Yankee Stadium, I think the bleachers were 75 cents. Today they're probably $30, you know, with some stupid figure. A hot dog, I think, was 25 cents if you wanted to get a hot dog while you were watching the game. That was a common thing, to get 2 hot dogs and a soda while you were watching the game as a lunch. Or you'd buy a bag of peanuts or popcorn and watch the game. Other people would go to the racetrack. That was not popular with the Jews. Some people did, but most didn't go. Doctors made house calls. I think a house call in the 50s was $2 or something. The doctor would come to the house. If you were sick, you'd call the doctor and say, I need a house call. And he'd tell you he'd be there in the morning, or he'd be there in the afternoon. They had MD plates on the car, which meant they were allowed to double park and things like that, and they didn't get a ticket. And the guy would come up to the house with his medical kit, look you over, test you, give you a shot or a prescription or whatever, and you didn't have to go. And the medicine back then, you know, they gave you, I mean, if you were sick with a sore throat and a cold and a cough, it basically is, all the doctor had to do was go in the room and uncap the bottle of penicillin and you'd get better. But they'd give you a shot of penicillin. And usually the next day you'd be pretty close to normal. Maybe 2 days later you'd be out of it. The fever would be gone and you could do what you want again. Didn't take long. Once in a blue moon, the doctor'd have to come back in 2 or 3 days and give you a second shot, but that was maybe 1 out of 20. It worked great. You know, people like that. You know, you just called the doctor, they give you the penicillin, and then it went south from there. But it worked pretty good. You know, the lifespan of people in America, if you go back and watch old shows, you go back to the 40s even, there's people like, they'd have, you know, you'd see them on radio shows where they filmed it and or they interviewed them, or this and that. People were going to these shows in their 80s, 85, 88 years old. They were very mobile and active. They weren't glued in front of the TV set. They weren't glued in front of the internet. They weren't eating garbage food. Fast food didn't exist. They were eating real food. And they didn't have all these crazy medicines they were taking with side effects. And a lot of people lived a long time in America. 90s was not that common, but well into the 80s was rather common. Without a sophisticated medical system. And people didn't have that much surgery back then. You broke a leg, yeah, you needed surgery, stuff like that. Your appendix burst, okay, they would take the appendix out. They'd take the tonsils out, maybe. But they didn't do much surgery. They didn't do it. And people lived a long time. And there were people that would tell you, I remember meeting people that, years and years ago, where they would say, I don't go to the doctor unless I can't get out of bed. And people were taking no medicines. Oh, they maybe took aspirin or something every now and then, or Geopolitical or some Pepto-Bismol for an upset stomach or this and that. But they basically didn't take much medicine. The schools were safe. It was all different. School was cheap. I mean, I went to college in the 60s, and it was about $600 a year for tuition. A year. What do they charge today? $40,000? See, the young people don't know from a life like this. We lived in the real world only. There was no virtual world. We played board games. We played card games. We played ball games. We went outside even in the bad weather and played with the other kids. There wasn't TV. There was very little of anything on TV that was any good. And it was black and white. There wasn't that dynamic, and the TV screens were curved, and you had no cable, so the picture was lousy, and it faded, it went in and out, and the sound would go in and out. If it was raining or snowing, the picture was really bad. It got what was called snow, hundreds of white dots across the screen. It wasn't very good, and it wasn't that interesting. I remember when I was a kid, they were still showing silent movies on TV. In the early evening, you watch silent movies if they put them on TV. There was no talking. Sometimes they had captions. It was crazy, It was a completely different life, a completely different America, and people lived cheap and easy. A guy worked as a clerk in a store. He could have a house. He could buy a car. Today, you work as a clerk in the store. You're lucky you got food. You'll have an apartment with roommates. They used to have rooming houses where a woman, a widow, would have a 4-bedroom house or something like that, and she would take in people, very careful who she screened. And there was single people that didn't have a lot of money, didn't want their own house or whatever, and they would get a room in the house, and the woman that was running the house would clean the rooms, clean the house, and they would frequently, the woman would make meals, like in the morning a breakfast and then have a dinner, and they called these boarders, and she'd keep 2, maybe even 3 in the house, and that was her living. She didn't have a work skill. She had a house, probably free and clear, or a tiny mortgage, and that was her housekeeping job. She cooked for the boarders, breakfast and lunch, and they're usually working people, sometimes retired. And that was common to have that, in the same house, not an apartment, in the same house. So people that were single and had a nice job, but not a great job, not a lot of money, they'd go there. They'd come home from work. They'd have dinner. They didn't have to cook dinner. They didn't have to go shopping. And then they would retire to their room. There were no TVs, so maybe they had a radio in their room. Or people read books. Who do you know who reads books today? Very rare. Kindle maybe. Now they got books that talk to you. That was a whole other world. There was no virtual world. The women stayed home and took care of the family and the children. And there was so much less juvenile delinquency, alcoholism, drug abuse, crazy behavior. Anyway, let's get back to Moses. So it should be easy to leave the daughter of Babylon if you know how bad it really is. So when Pharaoh drew near, it's Exodus 14:10, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, now they're going to be crying out unto the Lord here pretty soon, Jeremiah 30. And they said, they'll be clutching their guts like a woman giving birth, they'll be so scared. And they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. You see? It's not going to be that way this time. Okay? And Moses said unto the people, fear you not, stand still and see the salvation of Jehovah, which he will show. The salvation, that word is Yeshua, the name of Yeshua. It means salvation. They don't teach you in the church that the word is Yeshua, which is the name of Yeshua. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. Well, like Moses and Aaron were the beginning, the two witnesses are like Moses and Aaron, the judges, and the people surrounding Israel doing the siege against them. You will see them no more. They get burned up. In this case, they got drowned in the Red Sea. I'll keep reading. The Lord said, Jehovah said, Jehovah shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Same thing today. And Jehovah said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thy hand over the rod would be a staff, a walking stick, not a cane, a bigger stick. 5 foot, 6 foot, something like that, I guess. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thy hand over the sea, and divide it. See, when you walk in rough terrain with a staff, you hold it in a hand and you're climbing rough terrain. You're not walking on concrete. On concrete, you don't need a staff. But you put it down in the ground and you walk, it stabilizes you tremendously. Thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. That's really something. And the Red Sea's pretty wide, many miles. And behold, I will harden the heart of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them, and I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts. You see, the word host means armies. Pharaoh and his hosts. Pharaoh and his armies. They don't want you to know that Jehovah's name is associated with armies. So they put a stupid word in there to throw you off called host. Upon his chariots, and upon all his hosts, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. You see, the chariots would get pulled usually by one horse. If you watch the chariot races in that old movie Ben-Hur, where the Hollywood Moses, Charleston Heston was in it, they have 4 horses. And the bad guy and his horse has this thing coming out of the wheels like some sort of a four-bladed knife, and he chops the other wheels, the other car up, or the other chariot up. And this is most likely where James Bond and Goldfinger, where they got the idea to take the Aston Martin and the thing comes out and chops up the other guy's tires. And he's driving along a mountain road, James Bond, and this girl with a Mustang comes by, and he pushes this multi-bladed thing spinning on an axle and chops her tires and her cars up. Now, you can't do that with 2 moving cars, because it would spin the cars around and it would crash. But it's Hollywood, And upon his host, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Jehovah when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And this is similar today when those laying siege to Israel get burned up. They're gonna all know Jehovah did it. And the angel, if the military of Israel did it, they would all be praising the military and going back to the military as their defense, not Jehovah, and ignore Jehovah and keep doing the Talmud and all the other garbage. And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And this is the same pillar that's going to be over the dwellings in Jerusalem and keep us warm at night and cool in the day and keep the rain off us. Can't wait. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. See, life without the virtual life on the internet and all that it involves, and the cable TV and all, it's going to be better. It's going to be better. When I was a small kid, there was nothing to watch on TV that was really any good. It was just a distraction in the evenings, starting about 8 o'clock to 10 or 11. They had a few shows on that people watched that were rather entertaining. A lot of westerns, a lot of comedies, drama comedies, variety shows like Ed Sullivan and stuff like that. There wasn't that much going on. And life was better. People interacted with each other. In my apartment building, the neighbors would go down in the warm weather, sit across the street by a schoolyard on beach chairs, and they would smoke and bring what do you call it, a thermos with them, and drink whatever they were going to drink: coffee, tea, juice. They'd bring sodas, and they talked and they had interaction with each other. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night, so that the one came not near the other all the night. So the Israelites were able to see, but the heathen could not. You got that? Have you seen this thing before? Rise, shine, your light has come, the glory of the Lord has risen unto thee. Darkness shall cover the earth, gross darkness the heathen. Okay. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caught, that was Isaiah 60, verse 1, I was just reading. And Jehovah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. So there was a path opened in the Red Sea. It didn't necessarily open 10 miles wide. I don't know how wide it was. It was probably a few hundred yards wide or something. And they walked through it on dry land. With the waters, were high. They might have been 80, 100 feet high on either side. And they were held back supernaturally. It'd be a little scary. You'd be wondering, what if that comes down? What if the water breaks, And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud. So there was a pillar of fire and a cloud at the same time. The fire probably kept the children of Israel warm, and the cloud gave them the darkness so they couldn't get to the children of Israel until the Red Sea had parted and they go on their way. So God delivered them from the wrath to come, as it says. But they weren't raptured. How about that? And troubled the host of Egypt, the army of Egypt, and took off their chariot wheels. Now, I don't know how he did that. I don't know. I guess he spoke it and they fell off, or I don't know. I guess he did it somehow, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for Jehovah fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And Jehovah said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horses. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea. Maybe he was holding the rod. It doesn't say that. It might have been he just went like this. And probably just like that. And the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and Jehovah overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the armies of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Okay, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to take a fast break. I'm going to start tying this together to what's going to happen in the nations and the daughter of Babylon. Do you think that God maybe bolstered the faith of the Israelites so they would walk through the water on dry land instead of saying, "How do we know it's not going to come back? What are we talking?" I think he did. They all went, and then I was scared too. Sort of, kind of to help their faith, they had the Egyptians behind them. So they didn't have much choice, and that's going to be the daughter of Babylon. You're not going to have much choice to stay there. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared Jehovah and believed Jehovah and his servant Moses. You see, he built their faith. The Israelites are going to get so scared they're going to clutch their guts and turn pale. That's the birth of a nation in a day. But then that deliverance is going to come and it'll be glorious, and their faith will shoot up like a rocket ship. That's what happened to the Israelites. They were sitting there telling Moses, "What'd you do? You schmuck, you took us out in the wilderness so we get buried out here. Why did we ever listen to you, you moron?" You know, that was probably kind of what they were doing, right? And maybe in a more polite, I don't know. But maybe not, I don't know. But they would say, "What'd you do? You took us out here to get killed. Great. Gee, why didn't you just leave us there? We had meat and everything else." They were living under Satan's dominion. They had no idea what was to come. 400 years they're living like this. All of a sudden they're going to be free, have their own country, wealth, riches, you know. It was foreign to them, like it's foreign to you. But it'll happen. They didn't have the baptism of the Holy Spirit, so they had it harder. We're going to do another passage, but let me look into chat first. And these are not easy times to go through. And you'll be leaving your homes, not just in America, but other countries, to come to Israel and stop in the wilderness like Moses did. But I think your stop in the wilderness will be, I don't know, days, 40 days, a couple of weeks, I don't know, not a very long time. No 40 years or anything like that. 40 years was he was waiting for them to die off before they came into the promised land. The shift the quality of life. America deteriorate. Why did they? I think God was taking the good life of America away, but it was never that good. You know, they had all the wars constantly, but you know, took it away. Okay, let me check my notes. There's a lot of you, or a bunch of you, that I've heard from over time that have a lot of things wrong with you physically. Okay? And you want God to heal you. There's a lot of reasons probably why he's not healing various ones, but there's also sort of what I would say a universal reason, and I'll give it to you. And he gave it to me this morning, is this. Let's say you're really busted up, like I know quite a few of us are, including me. And then all of a sudden, one day, you're, boom, everything's finished. You're fine. You don't have any problems of any sort. No hearing problems, walking, arthritis, skin problems, eye problems, teeth problems, this problem, that problem. Well, now that's a sign and wonder. And then the people that are around you, neighbors, co-workers, friends, family, who knows, gonna say, wow, you know, I want this healing too. I'll go to Jehovah. So now they're starting to turn you to Jehovah for the wrong reasons, you see. And they're not written in the book of life. But they are going to chase the signs and wonders because an evil and adulterous generation wants the signs and wonders. Now, Yeshua gave them the signs and wonders, and they didn't do anything while he got killed. They didn't speak for him, they just abandoned him. Signs and wonders are, like, clouds without rain is the results. They don't do much. The people just chase the signs and wonders because it's greed. They want to get better. That doesn't mean they're going to serve God. It means they're going to know that there's a God, but that doesn't mean they're going to serve God. Their name's not in the book of life. It ain't going to happen. So he doesn't want the wrong ones getting healed and you getting healed and causing others to come to him for the wrong reason. I don't know if I'm expressing this correctly. Or the best. So let me get my notes on this from this morning. If he healed all your ailments, it would be a strong witness to those that know you. And this is not something God wants to do right now. So just wait soon enough and the Lord will break, it says in the King James, covert, which means cover. Like a lion attacking the wildebeest, he hides behind the bushes and then he bolts out and gets them. So when you get your healing, with the appearing of the sign of Son of Man, they're going to get their punishment. So they're not going to have an opportunity to turn to him because they saw the signs and wonders. These people don't have ears to hear, and they don't have eyes to see, and the Lord doesn't want them turning to him because of wealth and riches. That's why the people serving the Lord are not wealthy and rich, yet those serving Satan are. He works like that, God doesn't. Satan wants people to turn to him for money. Satan can't heal. The only healing Satan does is deception. An unclean spirit gets in somebody and causes physical trouble for their body, and then another witch, false believer or otherwise, calls the unclean spirit out of that person, and the unclean spirit's cooperating with the other witch, and then the ailment lifts from the person and they get healed, and then they get ill again. So that's why you see people at these old tent prayer meetings where they couldn't walk and then they could walk and they're healed, and then you find out a few weeks later they're back where they were. The demon goes back in them. Goes to the dry place, comes back, sees his house is swept clean, goes back in. Person's not repentant, continuing his sins, giving place to the devil, and it's worse for this person because the unclean spirit brings 7 more. Okay, we're going to go to where? No, where do we find my place? Hang on a minute. Let's go to Numbers 11. Life in the wilderness. Okay. Verse 1. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of Jehovah burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. Now, they had been delivered in their camp complaining. Many of you are probably complaining and praying, and that's not exactly the same thing because you haven't been delivered yet. And you could be complaining about your health, your finances, praying for deliverance from that, but that's not the same. They'd already been redeemed out of Egypt and stuff, and they saw a lot of signs and wonders that you have not yet seen. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Jehovah, the fire was quenched. So he was burning them up, like the two witnesses burned the enemies up. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because of the fire of Jehovah burnt among them. God says he's a consuming fire. And the mixed multitude, he also says Jerusalem is his furnace. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, fornicating, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat, meat? Who give us meat? The Yiddish is Fleischig, and in the Hebrew it's Bashar. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. The Egyptians were pulling fish out of the Nile with nets in wholesale quantities, so they were handing it out to the slaves without problems. They had plenty. God was trying to be good to them. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of bdellium, and that could be like a pearl color. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills, or beat it in a mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it, and the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. It would be olive oil. The word is shemen, which it wouldn't be Wesson oil, it would be olive oil. And when the dew, the Egyptians, I believe, had plenty of olives, and when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. So all they had to do was get up in the morning and pick it. And that's all you got to do in New Jerusalem, is just pick some of the fruit of the trees. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. They were bellyaching that they didn't have flesh to eat. And Moses said unto Jehovah, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant, And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that thou shouldst say unto me, carry them in thy bosom as a nursing father heareth the sucking child, beareth the sucking child unto the land which thou swearest unto their fathers. So Moses was griping, his load was great. Whence should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. See, they come to Moses and they complain to Moses, and Moses is saying, basically, hey, I'm not you. What am I supposed to do here? He goes on and says, I'm not able to bear all this people alone, because it's too heavy for me. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me. I pray thee out of hand, if I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. See, now Moses is losing faith. He doesn't like what's going on, and he's starting to say, kill me. Let me die. See, the work doesn't get done. It's just passing it on to someone else. You don't want to do that. That's a breakdown in faith. Many of us are feeling wretched right now, but don't let your faith break down. It's wrong. And now that it's at the doors, the deliverance is at the doors, the temptation to be like this and the pressure to be like that would be greater. But don't let it happen. And Jehovah said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. So where do we see this happening again? We see it happening again in Isaiah 1. And I'll show it to you. It's well into the verse, maybe 22, something like that. It's 24. Isaiah 1:24. Therefore saith Jehovah, saith Adonai Jehovah of armies, the mighty one of Israel. I will ease me of mine adversaries, enemies, and avenge me of my enemies. And I will turn my hand upon thee, purely purge away the dross, and take away all thy tin. And I will restore my judges as at the first. And we just read about the first with Moses and Aaron. So we're going to have the 70 again. Now, where you read in Isaiah 125, and I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away thy dross, and take away all thy tin. Well, this is found in other places coming up fast on us. It's found in let me find it for you. We see it in Malachi 3, verse 3. And he, speaking of Elijah, shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto Jehovah an offering in righteousness. Okay? Very similar, isn't it? Zechariah 13:8. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, call Haaretz, land of Israel, saith Jehovah, 2 parts therein shall be cut off, and die, but the 3rd part shall be left therein, and I will bring the 3rd part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried, and they shall call on my name, and I will hear them, and will say, it is my people, and they shall say, Jehovah is my God. Okay? So this is how you interpret prophecy. You got to travel around and get all these things and put the pieces together. But now our soul, Numbers 11:5. Now our soul is dried. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. See, they got and they were complaining. So they got the manna at night when the dew fell, and they got up in the morning and picked it up. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in his door in his tent, and the anger of Jehovah was kindled greatly, lit up, saying, Moses also was displeased. And Moses said unto Jehovah, Wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant, and wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? All right, let's go back down where we were. So Moses petitions the Lord and tells him all the stuff that they're doing. This people, for they weep unto me, saying, Give us flesh that we may eat. They were crying about it. I'm not able to bear all this people alone because it's too heavy. And the Lord said unto Moses, this is Numbers 11:16, Gather unto me 70 men as the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. Now Isaiah 124. Therefore saith Adonai Jehovah of armies, the mighty one of Israel, I will ease me of my enemies, my adversaries, and among me, and avenge me upon my enemies. That would be the day of vengeance. I'm guessing, I think so. And I will turn my hand upon thee, purely purge away thy dross, and take away thy tin. Now listen to this. And I will restore thy judges, which were Moses and Aaron. Now it'll be the two witnesses, Elijah and Apostle John, who are judges, because they're prophets, and to be a judge you need to be a prophet, and they're the only two prophets. I will restore thy judges as at the first, Moses and Aaron, and thy counselors as at the beginning, the 70. There'll be another 70 in these days. Afterward thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. See, the judges work. Okay? So the Lord said, Gather me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there. I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them, meaning the 70, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear, if not thyself alone. So I expect the next 70 will have the spirit of Elijah, or pieces of the spirit of Elijah, or however you want to verbalize a supernatural occurrence. But that's how I discern it. And they'll judge matters and different things. And say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh, for you have wept in the ears of Jehovah, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore Jehovah will give you flesh, and you shall eat. You know, you shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but even a whole month, until it come out of your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because that you have despised Jehovah. That's how he's interpreting it. God gets it right. They despised Jehovah, which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? They were rejecting the redemption, the deliverance, because they didn't have their belly full of meat. And Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen, and thou hast said, I will give their flesh that they may eat a whole month. Shall the flocks and the herds be slain for them to suffice them, or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them, to suffer them? And Jehovah said unto Moses, is Jehovah's hand waxed short, that thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not? The hand waxed short is he doesn't have enough of his arm to reach out and pull you up out of the pit or something, okay? It's a figure of speech. And Moses went out and told the people the words of Jehovah, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. So these 70 were not all Levites, I guess. And Jehovah came down in a cloud and spake, it could have been, but it doesn't say that, in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. So Moses was laying hands on him and passing the Spirit onto them, like people do today. No, the Lord did it. Sorry, the Lord took the Spirit, took it from Moses and gave it to them. The Lord did it. And gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, and they did not cease. And this is a gift of the Spirit, prophecy. But there remained two of the men in the camp. The name of the one was Eldad. Today that's a big rent-a-car company, Eldad. And the name of the other was Medad. And the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out unto the tabernacle. And they prophesied in the camp. And there ran a young man and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad do prophesy in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men, answered and said, My Lord, Moses forbid them. And Moses said unto them, Enviest thou for my sake? Would God that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his spirit upon them? And Moses gat him into the camp, he and the elders of Israel. See, I say this all the time. I wish there was 10,000 teaching like me. I really do. That's what Moses was saying. Yeah, what do I mean, the Lord wants to make prophets out of these people? Great, it's lovely. It's better for me, better for Israel, better for everybody. I'm not going to kick against this. And there went forth a wind from Jehovah and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were, a day's journey on this side, and as it were, a day journey on the other side, round about. So they had a huge amount laying down there. And as it were 2 cubits high, it was a stack of quail. I mean, it was swimming in quail, high upon the face of the earth. And the people stood up all that day, all that night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quail. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and Jehovah smote He smote the people with a very great plague, and he called the name of that place Kibrotiah, because there they buried the people that lusted. He was really mad at him, but he was weeding out the bad ones. And the people journeyed from Kibrotiah Okay. So he gave them what they wanted. sort of like, be careful, you might get what you pray for. And he punished them too. You see, the people that are going to come on the next great wilderness are going to go into, on the next great exodus, are going to go into the wilderness before they come into Israel. Very much like Moses and Aaron in the first exodus. They're going to go into the wilderness. It's not going to be 40 years. I don't see that at all. But they're going to pass under the rod. Did they pass under the rod with Moses? Well, sort of, because he held the rod out over the Red Sea, which they say it's like a baptism. And he held the rod out to open the Red Sea, so they kind of sort of went under the rod, you know. And in this case, in the wilderness, in the next, you know, immediate future, they'll be entering the bond of the covenant. And then you come into Israel where he accepts you. Okay? So, yeah, there's going to be a wilderness experience. I don't know exactly what's going to go down in the wilderness. We're not told, but some people aren't going to make it. They're going to steal, they're going to lie, they're going to do adultery, they're going to do fornication, they're going to do this, that, murder, I don't know about murder, but they're going to do bad things, probably sins that just affect themselves more than other people. I don't think they'll be murdering. All the Israelites are going to come out, all the 12 tribes, wherever they are going to come out from them, wherever they are, and they're going to go on this next great exodus. They're going to be in the wilderness, pass under the rod, enter the bond of the covenant. If they don't make the cut, they're going to die in the wilderness. For his name's sake, Jehovah brings them out of all the countries. That's the scripture. Not because they were so righteous or groovy in the way they did things, quite the contrary, but for his name's sake he brings them out. But he doesn't bring them into Israel unless they pass under the rod. In other words, they're really those that are Jehovah's, and they enter the bond of the covenant. Then they come to Israel. Where the wilderness is, I don't know. But it's not in Israel, because after they leave the wilderness, they come into Israel. So how could it be Israel? It doesn't make any sense. Let me take a peek at the chat. So that's why I'm telling you this stuff. Let me get in my notes, more importantly. See, Moses and the people did not have the scriptures that we have. The people at large did not have the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Moses had the Holy Spirit, Aaron had the Holy Spirit, and now these 70 had the Holy Spirit. The other Israelites and people with the Israelites that came out of Egypt that were not Israelites, they didn't have the Holy Spirit. They had no scriptures to read. You do. You have the prophecies. So the Lord spoke with Moses and Aaron because Moses and Aaron had no scriptures to go by. Things were not written down that he prophesied to the people. And I have another analogy for you. The rabbis today, with the Talmud, which is an extra biblical book that they wrote, and they teach the people that the law that Moses wrote down was not for the Israelites, it was for the heathen to throw them off. And this is a big lie. And they took Moses' oral sayings and they wrote them down in their own book called the Talmud, which overrides the Bible. Then they teach the people that you cannot understand the prophecies. Only the top sages, the top dog rabbis can understand the prophecies. So they read the prophecies and they convince them they don't know how to understand it. They got to read what the famous rabbis, like Rambam and the other characters, what they wrote about it, which is conflicting. They conflict with each other. It's confusing, that's all. Like pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib is confusing. It's like that with them. Satan's the same. So the rabbis today promise him all the promises in the Bible that would apply to a good Israel. And they don't teach them about correcting their errors. So they continue the bad stuff, continue with the Talmud, plus many other bad things, and tell them, oh, you could expect the blessings and promises of the Lord, where the Lord says he's going to cut them off. 2/3 are going to be gone. So they're teaching them garbage. They apparently hate the Israelites to lie to them like that. So they're giving Israel false hope, and they're waiting for Mashiach to come and rescue them and all this other stuff. And they're doing evil all the time. Now, where do you see this parallel in America? You see it with Trump, the great hope. They're all waiting for Trump to come and save them. It's never going to happen. That's their Mashiach, an idol, Trump. It's also a false hope that America has. The rabbis have no idea what's going to happen. They think the same as the church. They think that they have killed God when they killed Yeshua. They're both cut out of the same satanic cloth. And they don't fear God. And they've seen that God they don't know this, but 2,000 years ago, roughly, he turned his face away from Israel and turned them over to their enemies. So they think either God's dead or he's finished with them or whatever. They're probably some believe different than others, but they could get away and do whatever they want, and they believe this life of theirs with Satan running the earth is going to continue and continue and continue, and they're crazy. They don't know they're about to hit the brick wall, and the brick wall's going to fall down on them and crush them. The churches teach about restoration of America. We gotta repent, we gotta come back to God and all this stuff. And the people teaching it to them know it's a farce. And they're a major part of the problem. Satan's the same. Like in Israel with the rabbis and the Talmud. There's a chance, I don't have this down complete yet, When we see Elijah teaching the Levites to make the offerings acceptable unto the Lord in Malachi 3, and we see the glory of God of Israel come suddenly to his temple, this might be, and probably is, after the day of vengeance. It's in redemption. So I don't imagine Elijah sitting there teaching the Levites and at the same time missiles and drones coming in on them. I don't see that. Okay? I just don't. So, the idea is you guys are busted up right now. I am. We all are. Okay? There's all kinds of pressures on us from family, from friends, from neighbors, co-workers, employers, teachers, whatever. And these people don't believe. They don't know what's going on. They don't want to accept it. They don't want to believe it. But you have to cling to your faith. You can't think the walls of the Red Sea are going to come down on you and you're going to drown. Okay? And you can't keep nagging the Lord for quail. Those of you that wait on the Lord shall not be disappointed. He never lies. And when he says not be disappointed, it's probably beyond your imagination how happy you will be. He's modest. He says not be disappointed. You'll probably be jumping for joy hysterically, unable to stop being joyful. You'll smile, your facial muscles awake. It's right at the doors. You can't give up, and don't keep nagging him. You want to seek him, you want to ask him questions about the Bible, that's one thing. You want to ask him for guidance in your life, that's one thing, that's okay. All this stuff is good. But you don't want to nag him, and I've been guilty of that, you know. I every day say, Lord, am I right about this with the timing? Am I wrong? What am I missing? For months I've been doing this, and he's not giving me any areas where I'm wrong. He just keeps giving me confirmations. Daughter of Babylon happened suddenly in a day and an hour. They're defacing the statues in Washington, D.C. They stormed the Capitol, apparently. They're burning American flags. They're raising Palestinian flags. The people raising Palestinian flags are saying, we're coming for you. Why do they want the Jews out of Israel? They don't want to see God run the nations with the Israelites serving him with a temple. And they know about that. Satan knows about this. Okay? They don't want that. So first you start with getting rid of East Jerusalem, getting it out of the hands of the Israelites. And that's Satan's plan, having the Muslims control it, or an international coalition control it, or whatever. So there's no temple going up on the side of the temple. Then you continue the war against Israel and keep driving them out, killing them, and getting them to leave. Get the West Bank away from them, and then you could have attacks coming from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Gaza, Egypt, and Yemen. And, you know, this is the same idea. Just get them to leave the place. Keep them in perpetual warfare. Then start opening the door for them to go to the nations. So the plan is get them out of Israel or kill them in Israel. And then what's Satan's next plan? What Hitler did. Go around the world and kill the Jews so it never pops up again. Is that hard to understand? And then they'll kill the Christians because the Christians are what they refer to as a polytheist. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. They call that polytheism. Okay? Yeshua being God is polytheism to them. The Holy Spirit, is not part of God. It's not God to them. You can't. If it ever went to happen, it would be all over. And then when all the non-Muslims were dead, the Muslim sects would fight against each other, and it would end with one Muslim left alive. That's how it would end. Then what would he do? I'm just being facetious and making a joke here, but they're very divisive in fighting. The Taliban, yesterday I put in my telegram, they announced, one of the big mucky mucks announced they want to go into Iran and attack Iran. So maybe the Taliban is going to be part of the enemies of Elam, which is Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and then go in there and attack with other countries. So you're about to embark on an exodus like they did. When they left Egypt, they got all kinds of stuff from the Egyptians. You'll get all kinds of stuff. Which means the appearing will happen before you leave. So they'll see you as who you are, as the son of God, or a daughter of God, you might say. The word son could be applied to children of God. And then they'll give you offerings. It could be that Washington, D.C. gets hit first, and then the rest of the country gets destroyed afterward. But now we're seeing the fires and the drought in connection with all these other current events. Not by itself years ago. This is different for that reason. So take heed. Watch. Lift up your head, your redemption draweth nigh. He's going to appear in the clouds, seated at the right hand of power, which is Father God Jehovah, like the lightning from the east to the west. Every eye shall see him. But John 6:40, those that are believers will have everlasting life, olam, for an indeterminate long period. Olam, and I think the other word is chai or chaya, which means life. And that word appears in Hosea 6:1 and 2. And actually in verse 2. When he delivers us out of the punishment. So you got to be strong. It's coming to the end. It's hard at the last stretch. Okay? You're at the last stretch of the last stretch. And it's hard. It's not easy. And you got to just, hang in there and just, he shortened the time. It's going to be real sudden, Now, these fires are going to do nothing but spread, and they're happening in other countries. Now, it's very difficult now to start getting updates on these fires. Go dig around in Google and see what they're telling you. They're not. Local sources are telling you the local scene in their area on the fires. They don't want you to know about all these fires. Satan knows it's a sign. He doesn't want you to know about it. So it's very hard. There used to be great fire maps around the world, but the company that had the fire maps was bought up by the United States, and now you don't get any decent fire maps. They don't want you to have this. I'll keep digging around for more and more. There's a drought now, but it doesn't say the people in America are going to die of thirst from a drought. No. There'll be a drought. There is a drought. I will kindle fires in and about our cities. I'm rather confident we're going to see a lot more fires. They might come from lightning. They may come from arson. They may be both. I don't know. I'm not sure. It says, I will kindle fires. That's Jehovah. He could do that with lightning or fire and brimstone or however he wants to do it. He could have enemies do it. I don't know what he's going to do, and there may be a mixture of different ways. So let's watch and see if there's more fires. And it's hard as heck to pull anything out of the internet now about the fires. And nobody in YouTube's reporting it. They are reporting it, but just news, secular news channels. Nobody's reporting it, tying it to Jeremiah 50 and 51. They won't do that. The church won't teach you the truth. Satan is the church, and he's the father of lies. He doesn't teach truth. He's a bad tree, and only bad fruit comes from Satan's trees. No good fruit. It's absolutes. And I wish there was 10,000 people teaching this, because I get weary doing it all the time. But I do it. It's my job, and I do it. And I don't really gripe about my job. Sometimes I gripe about how hard it is dealing with the people, like Moses did, that don't believe in offerings, just getting fed for free, and they want you to work for free and just eat as a beggar. We already get charitable food. They want me to eat cockroaches? That's not the spirit of the Lord. That's the spirit of the devil. They want you to have the worst things. That's not the spirit of the Lord. That's the spirit of the devil. People talk to me like I have 2 jets and a house on a landing strip like Copeland or John Travolta. Or I got a 10-year-old car, and we were happy to buy that 10-year-old car when our other car was 11 or 13 years old and it was giving us serious trouble. And they don't even want me to have that. What do they want me to have? Roller skates? Rollerblades? What do they want? They want you to have crap, because they are crap. They are the rejects. Don't you see that? They are not of us. Acts 2, they had all things in common. You know how far away these people are from all things in common? You know how far away these people are from sharing anything? These people resent preachers, yet they go and listen. Why? Because they're called but not chosen, and they're not going to show the good fruit of the chosen one, because of the chosen ones, because they're not in the book of life, and they're not a good tree. They're the tares that grow up together with the wheat, and when you can't separate them because you can't tell the difference. They look the same on the outside. But by their fruit you shall know them. Their fruit is no good. They don't have fruit. They just want to stuff themselves. They don't want to give forth fruit. They don't care. They're covetous. They're vain. The vanity manifests and they want this knowledge of prophecy. They don't know what to do with it. They have no faith. They don't know they have faith. They're called but not chosen. Like on Sunday, these people parade in at 11 o'clock and leave at 1 o'clock. And they act like the holy ones. These people act like the unchurched that want to learn the scriptures, but they're not. No, I'm not talking about somebody that's busted out, broke. I'm not talking about that. %10 of the people that come around on a regular basis do some type of offering. 90% don't. So rest assured, our numbers are drastically lower than you think they might be. Just coming around and listening doesn't mean anything. That's a good fruit in a way, but it doesn't help anybody but themselves. That's vanity. Do you understand? It's vanity. They just take. They don't give back. They don't give forth good fruit. They just eat the good fruit. They don't give any. So don't think there's that many of us. There's not. Much less. You'll never convince them of this with the giving. All they're going to say is, oh, you're a Copeland, you know. If I was living in a tent by the Sea of Galilee, taking a bath by dipping in the Sea of Galilee, they would make fun of me because I don't have a house to live in. Okay? And then if you have anything, you're a Copeland. But they still come and listen, don't they? But do they have eyes to see and ears to hear? No, not in the least. Not in the least. Are they in the church? No, they're not in the church. The church is horrible for them. They don't want to give to the church. There's a lot of pressure in the church to give offerings. They don't want to give to anybody. Do they know they're covetous, and money and covetous, which is related to mammon, is the root of all evil? They don't know it. They don't believe it. They got excuses for everything. Everything they got excuses for. Okay? Everything. And they want the preacher to live like a dog. As evidenced by their actions, not their words, by their actions. You, preacher, work for free for me. I don't give you jack. You do it for free, you dog. You think they respect Jehovah, or you think they're robbing Jehovah? I know I'm talking to them. They're a cloud without rain. They're a bad cloud that looks like a good cloud. A good cloud gives rain for the crops that they grow and produce good fruit. These clouds don't give any rain, so the crops give good fruit. They're worthless. They're not going to make it. If they did go on the Exodus because they thought they were good fruit, or they thought they were the elect, they'd fall down in the wilderness. They won't make it. They won't make it. And you're not going to change them. And talking like this isn't going to give them offerings. But don't expect to see that many of them. There are going to be very few of us. The load for Moses was great. He got the 70. They didn't seem to all be Levites, were they? Do you think the load on Elijah and Apostle John is not going to be great? Do you think he's not? They are going to have the 70. Where are they going to come from? I don't know. But it's going to be hard for them to work by themselves, I think. So what is your role? No, I'm not from Texas. If you want to make fun of me because I wear a hat, I'll block you. Let's not put political nonsense up in here, okay? The person's probably not here anymore, probably just jumps in chats all day and says stuff like that. Well, if you want to badmouth Kamala, what's it to me? Okay, I hope you got something out of this. Don't gripe to the Lord. I know I do it too. Try not to. It's a maturity. He knows your plight. He knows it. Remember, if you're busted up, like a lot of us are, self-included, he can't. If he just miraculously healed you of all your ailments, the people around you, not even your friends, your neighbors, co-workers, bosses, would see this. And it's not yet time for it. Soon it is. Days away. But not today. And then that will be the testimony to them, won't it? So he will use you as a sign and wonder to them. Did you get it? Did you get that? Use you as a sign and wonder to them. And then when they ask you what's going on, you're going to know how to open the mouth and spew forth the scriptures. You've been trained. And the Spirit will give it to you. You'll do a good job. Okay? You'll be sign and wonder. We all will. So we got to bear our situations, which are not so great right now, until redemption, which is really, really close. And then everything changes. Then the money, the wealth, the lands, the slaves and servants, and the working with the Lord, and the peace, and all that comes with it. Double portion. To the Jew first and then the Greek. Now tell me you're not part of Israel, not part of Judah. Now, tell me, give me a scripture. Go ahead. You can't. You can't. Now, there were Egyptians that came out of Egypt with the Israelites, but they came out at the same time. But you came out of churchianity, that bondage, before the others, because the others are still in it. So you're coming first, so to speak. I mean, in a way, I'm looking at it that way. So, I'm finding out, my wife told me, oh, go get an electric razor in case you don't want to shave one day. You don't have to put all the cream on and go like that, you know. So I bought one. I got a Panasonic, an older model, which was cheaper than much, like a third the price of the newer ones. And yeah, that's what the covetous want me to do: buy crap on sale, get charitable handouts. That's what they want for the person doing God's work, you know. And go try to wake them up and explain that to them, and see they won't. So this sucker shaves as close as a safety razor. I was shocked. I mean, I hadn't bought an electric razor in 15 or 20 years. I used to get the Norelcos and the Bronze, and they didn't shave, but you know, you 3-4 hours and you felt stubble. This thing, I can go just about 2 days. I don't see a difference between this and the safety razors to speak of. I haven't yet started using straight razors, but I can't imagine the straight razor is going to be much different, and I don't want right now to do it until I've got my vision back, because these things can give you a good cut, and I don't want to do it by touch. The safety razors is real easy to do it and not get cut, you know? Not a problem, you know. So anyway, that's a shocker. I didn't realize they came that far with razors. I had no idea. And it's fast. And I'm going to start putting aftershave lotion on when I'm done with the electric. Well, my father used to shave with electric. He used to use a powder. It came on a stick. I got to see if they sell it. Back then it was probably 10 cents. And he'd rub it on his face, and I guess it did something, and then he would shave with the electric. You can shave with an electric without a mirror. You don't need a mirror, you know. You're not going to cut yourself with it. You're not going to take your nose off. If you're shaving with a straight razor, you know, you can get your nose off or cut your lip off, you know. You got to watch that. I don't know if it's worth it, you know. I don't know. But what if there's no electricity? Well, then there's nothing to talk about. Then either you look like a rabbi, which I'm not going to be doing, or you shave with some type of a cutting edge. There's no other choice, unless when we get our everlasting life body, the men don't grow a beard anymore. I don't know. Are women going to have painful menstruation? I guess. My guess, probably not. But can I guarantee it? No. Do I have a scripture? No. Will the birth be more easy on the woman than it is now. In other words, less severe pain and so forth. I guess so. Because the curse is going away section by section. The last piece of the curse goes away when you have that spiritual, eternal life body and you're up in heaven with Jehovah and Yeshua. Then their curse is completely over with. That's the complete and final removal of it, because you're where you want to be. When you're in New Jerusalem and you have eternal life, you're pretty close, but not there yet. Because there's still bad people on earth that want to do bad things to you and stuff like that. So once you get up to, heaven, it's finished. The bad angels have been weeded out already. They're gone. So it's much nicer up there. What do you eat up there? I don't know. You must eat something. And the manna, the angels eat manna. God says, my bowels hurt for Israel or something like that. Right? So he has bowels that would mean to me maybe he eats. Not yet, almost. So he doesn't tell us that he sat down and ate a meal, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's no killing of animals up there, but I don't know. See, once, according to what Yeshua said, once we're able to bear the carnal stuff on earth, then he'll start teaching us this stuff about heaven. So I imagine when we get the everlasting life, we'll have the mind of Christ and be in a new covenant. He'll put his spirit, the lower in our heart and our inner parts. Then we'll go there. The women are going to behave differently than they do now, by the way, when the Lord's in their heart. Okay? And the men will too. And the children will. What about the animals? I don't know. I imagine they'll get changed too, and they'll have a much longer, healthier life. Will they be healed? Don't know. Ask them. Ask them to reveal it to me. Maybe it'll come. I haven't found scripture that's highly specific. But I believe the animals will reproduce plentifully, so that's going to be different. And I believe they're all going to be in good health, so that's different. So the health of our existing pets and animals, if you've got cows and goats and things and horses and donkeys, mules you don't want to have, because let each produce after their own kind. You don't want to cross horses and donkeys. Donkeys are pretty cool, They're tough little critters. They could kill hyenas. You ever see a hyena? It's like a big German Shepherd times 2 or something like that. They're huge. They come up way over my waist. They come up probably to my sternum. And they're strong and they're big and they got jaw pressure. Don't ask, Donkeys mess with them. When they start trying to get the donkey bites their ear and doesn't let go. And that hurts them like the dickens. They cry like babies, and then the donkey starts kicking them with his front feet. He usually lets them go, but what he does is he kicks their butt real bad. And that's a hyena. That's a tough cat. I think it's a cat. It might be a dog. I don't know. They're saying it could be a dog. Them things is tough. Real tough. I imagine if you had a few donkeys together, they could take out a pack of wolves. I remember a predatory beast gets a kick from a donkey in his ribs or his head or something like that. If he doesn't drop dead then, he may get knocked down, and then the donkey's going to start stomping him, and then he'll die. And if he runs away, he'll be so sick he might die later on. And they have a good concept that they can't get hurt. So the donkey gets him by the ear, these predators, and hangs on to him. Cats and stuff like that, big tough cats, and just gives it to him with the front hoofs. And generally after he gives him a thorough beating, and I mean thorough, he lets him go. He doesn't eat him, so he doesn't have to kill him to make his point. because he's not going to eat them. So it gives them a good thrashing and then lets them go. So they use donkeys to run around with sheep and goats to protect them from predators. They're pretty cool. They can carry a big load. You'll see they're pretty cool. You might want to have one or two. And they get kind of domesticated with you, like you can call them and they'll come over to the corral fence and, hang out with you, and you could pet them and you could go play with them, and, they're kind of fun. They're not inferior. Horses are cool too, but the donkey's not an inferior, stupid little animal like a junky horse. No, they got their own way. They're way more sure-footed than a horse. So if you want to go up rough terrain, the horse will be slipping and sliding, the donkey won't. So a mule's not something for Israelites to create because you're crossing. It's like idiots create what they call ligers. They, I guess, artificially inseminate a lion and a tiger, and they get a liger. Yeah, we're not supposed to do things like that. Okay. That's what I got for today. So I'm here. Please pray for me and my wife for a peace, safety, protection, and joy, healing of our bodies, strength, stamina, and endurance, and pray for our finances. Pray for our animals and pets that are all rescues to be happy, healthy, and whole. Pray for better videos. And pray for the peace of Yerushalayim, and I send my Shabbat Shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and for all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, I hope you have a good Sabbath, and it takes you 2 seconds to give me a thumbs up, and if you want to be notified when the eggs hit the fan in Israel, if they do, or in the Middle East, you'll get it sooner than me than you will from the news, so you could subscribe and click the notification bell, and that's it. I'm out.